Nice to meet you. I'm Chris with Cycle Source magazine, publishing 26 years. And I got into motorcycling because I grew up in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, around, a bunch of blue collar guys. Building bikes was what everybody did for entertainment, never a lot of money. So what you could do yourself or what a friend of yours could do and you could do something for him, that was part of how we did everything. And over the years, I guess that's what eventually took me to publishing the magazine, and everything was the more I learned this stuff, the more I wanted to learn, the more I wanted to share with other people, and it all kind of picked up from there. Building a chopper, man, it's completely different than building other motorcycles. You run into stuff. There's devils and demons the whole way through, and having your friends to help you out, that's always been a thing. Especially little towns like Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. If you know a painter, another guy welds, this guy knows how to lace and true wheels, that's the stuff that gets you through. I had a little aftermarket shop and, bouncing at a titty bar after hours to pay the bills there and feed my motorcycle habit. And almost like as a half-assed joke, we started a little newspaper magazine that we just drop off at the local bars and tattoo shops and bike shops. And we knew nothing about publishing or even journalism. I dropped out of high school in 10th grade, so if it wasn't for the woman in my life, I'm still a horrible speller. I'm terrible at grammar. But luckily, motorcycle people were very patient, and they saw that I had some passion for this, so they let me do it another time. And then, now, nearly 300 times later, 26 years of my life, and this has kind of been my life's work. But yeah, it started out with a borrowed computer from a stripper, went and sold all the ads for the first issue, because sales we were pretty good at from other things in our life, but the publishing part not so much. So we went to some guys that we knew that were doing a magazine for strip bars, and they were doing it. We were like, hey, they taught us just enough. We put the first issue off for 30 days till we could learn enough to do it, and off we went. When we started the magazine, I specifically picked the name Cycle Source because I didn't ever want it to be Evil Choppers of Death, or I didn't want it to be Big Wheel Baggers, even though this personally is what I love. This is what I love in a motorcycle. I always wanted Cycle Source to be a home for everybody, so when we do our bike shows, it's the same thing. There'll be up to 34, 38 classes, and we make sure there's a spot for everybody, not just so you can pat everybody on the ass, but so that you encourage everybody to come out and show what they did. Everybody has a place, because at the end of the day, no matter how you're customizing a motorcycle, you're putting your hands on it, you're putting, connecting your vision with your ability to pull that off. So it deserves the credibility for that. When we were still a hometown magazine in Pittsburgh, we did once a year, we had a great big annual contest. And that was probably 3 or 4 years in. So, 20 some years, 23 years. When I think about the fact, I still remember my first trip to Sturgis. And it was such, because everybody, that's the bucket list, right? You're gonna make the Sturgis one time. And I was exactly the same way, even though I was publishing a magazine at the time, I had finally made it to Sturgis. I stood on Main Street and I called my friends. I was like, dude, I'm here. And then all the years later now, this year I'm being inducted into the Hall of Fame there. And part of my story is that I've been doing events in Sturgis for 17 years. It's insane. Like, I can't even believe that that's my life. It's awesome. But that, again, dude, that goes back to community. There was a guy when I first started going to Sturgis, and everyone will recognize his name, Jay Allen from the Broken Spoke. And Jay, like he's done with hundreds of guys that came in before me, bike builders, vendors, magazine people, he took me under his wing. Sometimes he'd let me sleep in the bar. Sometimes it was a car out back. He would always make sure I had food. And he said, like, hey, you're gonna do a bike show. You're coming out here and doing this, you're gonna do a show, and maybe, on Wednesday you do a ride, So he made that stuff happen for me. Well, when it comes to the industry today and where things are going, you have to remember, first and foremost, I look at a thing like you said the word core. I'm a core enthusiast. I'm gonna be here, me and the guys that I loaf with, I'm gonna be here for the rest of my life. It doesn't matter. If Harley Davidson closed tomorrow, I would still find a way to make a motorcycle run, and I would customize it, and I would still be here. But as far as like the popular trend, yeah, I think baggers are coming down a little bit. They're definitely changing, over what we used to see with the lay frames and the big wheels and a lot of stuff that was so outrageous. That's changing now that there's a new generation coming into that group, and those guys are coming off of, motocross bikes and track bikes, and they're starting to bring a lot of that influence in. So you're starting to see the performance thing is going nuts. It's blowing up like crazy. They're dragging that into the baggers, but the biggest thing I can say about this, and this is the encouraging thing, even though motorcycling is definitely in a dip right now, it's not on a peak, the best thing that's going on is the boundaries are disappearing. When I was younger, what type of bike you were riding, whether it was an American motorcycle or if it was an import, very much determined the group of people that you hung around with and where you went. Today, those lines are disappearing. You can do anything you want with any kind of bike you want. People don't see the same separation. So it's refreshing to see that more of it is turning into that one big community now. Having these companies, and it's been tried so many times, but having these companies that are like these conglomerates that have investment groups behind them that are buying up all these pieces and trying to find a way to make it, the Amazon of motorcycling, because that was, Komodo came out and said that. And I'll say this stuff freely. I say it on our Sunday night show all the time. But Komodo came out and said that a year or so ago, that they wanted to become the Amazon of the motorcycle industry. And that's great in part, so that people have access and people have, quick resources. They can get the stuff quick, they can get it quick, they can grab stuff up without the responsibility that goes with the rest of it too, playing in the community. Again, your ability to do business at that level starts cutting away at very, very important parts of the foundation of this, But I've seen it happen, I'm old enough now. I've seen this tried generation after generation, and it never works out because there's just not enough there. There's not enough business. Like, the motorcycle industry really, at the end of the day, man, is hardly an industry. We hardly have enough revenue in the entire thing to call it an industry. So when it shrinks down in the recession periods, it's even less. So you have to question how long. What is that company's investment period? Like, what have they put aside to say, okay, we're going to do this 5 to 10 year plan. This is going to be our ROI expectations at year 3, year 5. Have they allotted for things getting tight to make it through to another part of it? Because if they just go away in the end, it's still going to come down to the guys that can turn around to a mill and turn around to a lathe. They're still going to be making parts like this. Those young guys, like the kids at Lowbrow, the guys at, the TC Brothers, there's a ton of companies out there. And in the performance thing, like, those guys are going wild with stuff. They're making more CNC stuff, 3D printing parts for motorcycles. So I think a part of this is always going to be impervious to the whims of the very top tier of business to it, Like I said, 26 years publishing this magazine, I've had the privilege of telling some of the greatest stories that there ever have been in motorcycling. And, I work myself to the bone. Like, people often say about me, and I'm not trying to inflate my own ego, but people say that I'm the hardest working man in the industry. And it's really because once upon a time, my life was going so bad, I was going in such a bad direction that motorcycles and motorcycle people saved my life.